Hey, what's up people? In today's video I want to talk about the Hinderer Xm-18 3.5 inch. I also have a smaller version. I actually have my smaller version longer than the large version, but this video is not about small or large. I'm gonna do a separate video maybe in the future, I don't know yet, but it's rather about the Xm-18 design in general. And I think the larger version works better for explaining what I'm trying to say. And it's also the more common version, I guess. Now, this knife has been on my list for a very long time actually. Kind of a grail knife, if you will. And I think it has been on my list for the same reason that a lot of other people like this knife. And that is because it's a very good looking knife. The Xm-18 design, if you compare all the folding knives on the market right now, of our time period, this is a very good looking knife design. It's very appealing, and I think it's very appealing to most people. Taste is obviously different, but I think it's a very good looking knife overall. It has this mechanical look on this side, and also the lines, everything flows together very well. It's a good looking knife, at least in my opinion. Now, I got this like almost a year ago, and I was not really impressed, to be honest, which is also the reason why I'm doing this video now, because I really wanted to take my time and see whether that feeling is kind of a momentary feeling, or that's how I feel about the knife over a longer period of time. And I wanted to use the knife a little bit more and see whether what I felt initially was actually true. So I'm a knife user. I use knives every single day of my life. Really, there is not a single day that goes by where I haven't used a knife. And I want to review this from a user's perspective, not from a collector's perspective. Because everything I say negatively about this knife is completely irrelevant if you just open a box every once in a while. Okay, this is just relevant if you really use your knives. Sometimes hard, sometimes not, but just get some use done. Okay, if you sit on the couch and flip this open and close, nothing what I'm gonna say here is gonna bother you, so I don't know. So, first I want to say a couple of very good things about this knife, because there are some good things here as well. It's not just all bad. The Xm-18 is a really good frame lock. I do like the frame lock quite a bit. It is a very well designed, well thought through, very long lasting design, I think. You have external thumb studs that lock up from the outside. I generally don't like liners on knives, but in this case, this takes a lot of the pressure that's on the transferred from the blade to the pivot and distributes it over the entire frame. It takes a lot of pressure off the pivot. By the way, the pivot is giant and also very built to a long life. The screws on here, if you know anything about screws on folding knives, these are really good screws. Female on this side, male on this side, long lasting, very deep screws. Also in-house made. That's, I think, the most impressive thing about Hinderer knives is that they make everything in-house. That's a very, very good thing, and not too common, to be honest. Even in the higher end knife world, not everybody can make their own screws. So very impressive in terms of build quality and build design. This is a very good frame lock, very long lasting. I think the Xm-18 can last you for an entire life if you treat it well. Maybe you need to replace a couple of things here and there, but it's gonna hold up. So it's a very robust design overall. Now the problems that I have with it is, for instance, this is the Xm-18 3.5 inch skinny. There you go, skinny slicer, which means it's the thinnest blade stock possible on an Xm-18 and the thinnest grind. I'm not sure if the skinny sheepsfoot is thinner than this in grind. Since they call this the slicer, I'm assuming this is their sliciest knife. This knife, out of box, not from sharpening, out of box is 0.48 to 0.55 millimeters behind the edge, which is 18 to 21 thousandths. Just to give you a perspective, my Spyderco PM2 that I have used for the last 7 years straight, this cut a lot of things and this was resharpened quite a bit. in 7 years after resharpening this, I think about 30 to 50 times resharpening on stone, not just touching up, but like real resharpenings, taking material off. This is about the same behind the edge thickness than this one, brand new. Now, it's not the worst geometry in the world, okay? You can still get a lot of cutting done with 0.48 millimeters, 20 thousandths behind the edge. It's still, it's a serviceable behind the edge thickness if your edge is right. But these edges on here, as you can see, the bevel, the edge bevel on the Xm-18 is rather small, which is a good thing generally speaking. If you have a thin geometry behind the edge, that's a good thing if the edge bevel is rather small. Now, because it's a very thick geometry back here, the edge kind of looks like this. So it's a very steep edge angle. Not like this. This is how it should be, and this is how it is. So the problem here is that if you cut something, first of all, you have to come in from a way higher angle. Normally you would do it like this, but you have to do it like this. And also, as you can see, this knife kind of really struggles to bite into things and to cut them, right? As you can see, it slips off here very easily. Which leads me to the next thing. This knife is always dull. Like, always dull. Before I started this video, this knife was razor sharp. I cut a couple of branches of wood and it's back to, you know, not sharp anymore. People are gonna say, hey, the geometry here is because this is a hard use knife, and I get that. You know, some knives are made to be hard use. I totally get that. The Microtech SOCOM is a hard use knife, the Demco 8020 is a hard use knife. They're not thin behind the edge, and this one isn't either because it's a hard use knife. I get it. But if you have that geometry and that edge angle, your edge needs to be very, very sharp to get any cutting done. Because if it isn't sharp, it doesn't cut. It doesn't cut at all. If you cut cardboard, you constantly get stuck because the edge is blunting. And in general, for the amount of times I use this knife versus the times I sharpen it, I think I spent way more time sharpening it than actually using it, which is kind of bad. This is Magna cut steel. I don't know if that's a normal production Hinderer or if that's like a sprint run thing. I don't know. But this is, I wouldn't base my opinion on Magna cut, which I don't have a lot of experience on Magna cut yet, but I wouldn't base my opinion on this Hinderer because I feel like this knife is treated very, very softly. My S35VN 3-inch Xm-18 is also very, very softly heat treated, and the edge constantly rolls over to one side or the other. Not in this case. In this case it doesn't roll, it just blunts. The 3-inch Xm-18, by the way, which is a spear point, normal spear point, not a slice or grind, is 0.7 millimeters behind the edge, which is 27 thousandths. Just to give you another perspective here, what we are looking here in grind thickness. So yeah, I'm constantly sharpening the knife and everything. It's very annoying, to be honest, to use this. Now again, people say, hey, this is not, they treat it softer so it's tougher. I don't think it's necessarily, well, why do you use Magna cut in the first place? If you go, like, why do you use PM steels and then treat them really softly? I would rather not have a PM steel on this with this hardness, or I would have a PM steel that's a little bit harder. You can't do both. It's kind of, that's not how it works, right? Because you don't get any edge retention out of this. So why use Magna cut in the first place if you're not going for higher edge retention already, right? You could already use a non-powdered steel that's just tough and then treat it softly so it's even tougher. I don't know. But there is zero edge retention on this, so why the Magna cut doesn't come into play here, really. Now the next thing that speaks against the whole hard use argument is that this knife is really only comfortable in one type of grip, which is the saber grip. If I try to hold this in a hammer grip, as you can see, this is a hammer grip, right? This is a saber grip. If I hold it in a hammer grip, my index finger gets pinched by this inward curving and very sharp flipper tab. It's very painful over time. My middle finger sits right on that corner, and I have hot spots here, 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 and even in the saber grip I have hot spots everywhere. This is the most comfortable grip to hold this knife, and I have hot spots. As soon as I cut things, I have hot spots here, here, here. And I use knives a lot, I work a lot with my hands. As you can see, I have blisters. No, the pain does not come from the blisters, it comes from the hot spot. I have double checked on that. Well, you can also hold it on a hammer grip in this choil. And funny enough, just yesterday I cut myself because this choil is not big enough for my index finger. And also the choil, one very bad thing about the choil is that when you cut cardboard, it constantly goes into this and gets trapped here, and you need to stop cutting and restart your cut. For instance, a PM2 has a choil that's way comfortable, way more comfortably, and it has this ramp right here, as you can see, and this ramp prevents from material going into the choil. And also I don't cut myself on the choil. Again, the argument, this is a hard use knife. If you're hard using your knife, you probably are not in an environment that is very clean. If I keep cutting myself on the choil, on the edge, back here, then this is not a very well designed knife. And people are also gonna say, hey, the hot spots are because you don't wear gloves. This is made for firefighters. Hinderer Xm-18, for instance, which has the same, it has the same length, the same handle length, same thing. The difference here is that this handle is straight and this handle is curved. Look how much space, look how much room I have left on this handle. And look how much room I have left on this one. Nothing, almost nothing. And I have smaller hands. So if I'm wearing gloves, if I'm wearing really big gloves, and do you know how big firefighter gloves are? They are huge. I wouldn't be able to fit my hand, yet alone I would still be cutting myself in the choil area here. So yeah, I get it. There might be one or two firefighters out there that use this knife, but let's be honest right here, not bullshit ourselves. This knife is made for guys like you and me, for people that spend way too much money on knives. If you break it down, like what's the two most simplest thing a knife needs to do? Like, let's go really, really simple and forget about heat treatment, forget about PM Steel's MagnaCut, forget about all those things. The most essential things a knife needs to be able to do is it needs to cut, and you need to be able to hold it comfortably while you're cutting. Those are the most basic, most simplest things. And a lot of knives out there don't have both of those two things. For instance, my PM2 is great cutting cardboard, but it's uncomfortable because of the compression lock and because of the boxiness when I do harder cutting, like wood cutting, for instance. But at least it has one of those two things. At least the blade cuts well, and the handle is ergonomic as long as you don't use it too hard. Again, which speaks very much against the hard usability of this knife, because it's very uncomfortable during the harder use. This knife has problems both cutting and being ergonomic. And I feel like one of those two things needs to go. Either you make it a hard use knife and it cuts shit like it does, but at least it's comfortable while doing so, or you make it cut really well and unergonomic. But one of those two things needs to go. You can't miss out on both things, in my opinion. The really sad thing about this is, I really like this design. I like looking at it, I like handling it, I like fidgeting with it. I think it's a great design overall, like I said. I think it's a very good looking knife. But let's go back to the beginning of this video. This knife, the best thing about this knife is its looks. It looks really, really good, but it sacrifices all of its performance for its looks. So yeah, the Xm-18, to be honest, leaves me a little bit cold. Again, if you are not using your knives too often, everything that I said is not an issue. If you use your knives a lot, I don't know, Hinderer Xm-18 is a good. It also has that external thumb studs. That's a good knife in that price range, I would say. It has a hollow ground blade that cuts really well. It has a more neutral handle that's straight. and not filled with hot spots. I'm also currently, like I said, I'm currently using the Eclipse quite a bit. I like the Eclipse a little bit more for its handle design, and yeah, I will do a video in the future whether I like this knife, whether this knife is a little bit better than this one because of the differences here in the handle design. Like I said, this one is curved and this one is more straight. I didn't say that, but I say it now, right? So yeah, conclusion, Xm-18. From a knife user's perspective, this is a really bad knife. From a coolness perspective, from a visual perspective, this is a great knife. But it's just not very usable at all. The heat treatment is really bad on here, on all my Hinderers that I have had so far. I can't speak for the 20 CV yet because I haven't used that enough. But on the S45 Yen and the Magna Cut, the heat treatment was very bad. The edge angle, really bad. Geometry, cutting geometry really bad. Ergonomics really bad. Yeah, this is not a smear campaign, by the way, against Rick Hinderer. This is just from a user's perspective. Just about the knife. It's not about the maker. To me, that's way more important. So yeah. Like I said, I'm really excited how the Eclipse is gonna do over time, and then we see whether I like that better. But so far, Xm-18, can't really recommend it, to be honest. Unless you don't use your knives a lot, then fuck it, you know. Yeah, thank you guys for watching. Enjoy Mother Nature, as I do right now, and eat some wild garlic, because that's in season right now. Just don't kill yourself with something that isn't wild garlic. So, thank you guys, and maybe we see each other in another video. Goodbye.